Welcome everyone to season 2 of Conversation with a Consultant. Today, Ron will be speaking with Maura, and I hope you all enjoy this conversation as we all learn a little more about consulting and financial planning. So if you're not aware, this is part of our Resource YYC initiatives to learn a little more about different areas of professions and consulting as a whole. So we hope if you are a consultant or anyone just interested in getting to know different people, come on down to Resource YYC in Calgary and check out our co-working space. And we've got many different options for you, so I hope you can come check us out. Over to you, Ron.
Good. Thanks, Rosemary. Yeah, and I encourage you to come down and meet Rosemary and check out the space. It's a great spot to network with professionals. So, today I'd like to welcome Maura Shaftoe, and today part of our series around conversation with consultants is really, again, like Rosemary said, to network, get people to understand a bit more of the professionals. And Maura has a great background. Her company is she's a financial planner, cash flow specialist, and get to know a little more about that. I think that definitely is a timely topic. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you here today. Thanks for joining us, Maura.
Thank you for having me.
Good. And you know what? I suspect you'll do a better job at tell us a bit about your company than I will. So maybe give us a little elevator pitch on what your company does and how you got started there.
I've been in the financial services industry for 10 years, and I started in the insurance end of that industry and then moved into financial planning, became certified. One of the things that I kept coming up against was that people really struggled with their relationship with money. Mm-hmm. And so I did some research and I became a certified cash flow specialist. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy that part of helping people, because it really brings to light some of the ways that we handle money. And often it's not just about the money. So I like to, dig in with people and get them to where they need to go, figure out what their goals are, and then, send them out in the world prepared, empowered and prepared.
So it sounds like a bit of a certified cash flow therapist.
Well, anytime you're talking about money, well, really, anytime you're doing anything with people, there's always that sort of, how do you get them from point A to point B? So in particular with money, there's so many stories around money. We grow up with, opinions about money. Things happen to us. And I think you're going to see more and more about behavioral cash flow coming into the industry.
So, and you were in industry before, so you worked for a company, right? And
I worked with a bank in Alberta for 6 years.
Yeah. So huge change. So a couple of things we want to talk to consultants to learn about that whole process of becoming a consultant. But a lot of that journey, starts with big companies for a lot of people. So maybe tell us, what was your role like? So you would have definitely dealt with people's finances, and within the big company. So what was maybe a bit of that, bit of your background and how it helped you decide to go out on your own? And it's a huge change for any individual to go working for a company and then out on their own. So kind of what led you to that point where you said, I want to do it on my own?
Well, this is my second career. So I have been I was in the automotive industry for many years.
Oh, wow.
Went out on my own as a fleet consultant, went back into the industry, and then switched over. So it wasn't my first rodeo when it came to working for myself.
Yeah.
One of the things about working within the structure of a bank, there were certain things I could not do with a client. So I was specifically there to be an insurance planner. So although I could provide a little bit of guidance, I couldn't do in-depth coaching in terms of cash flow planning. So that was one of the reasons why I made a shift.
Well, that's interesting, because that is one of the things that people who work in a big company have lots of good ideas, but are constrained by the company for good reasons, right? So that's allowed you to go out and what prompted it, it sounded like you did a bit of learning along that way, but did you have any role models for this type of business, or is it just something you felt a passion to do and thought you'd go and solve a problem in the world?
Yeah, I don't know anyone who's doing this business this particular way.
Yeah.
But certainly I do have a lot of role models in terms of people consulting out there, providing service to clients. I am developing a hybrid model, so I do some one-on-one coaching and developing out some group coaching also. Really depends on the situation. And I am taking my business more online. I'm sort of learning that as I go.
Yeah, that whole online, that during COVID, it changed everything. So maybe I'll just ask you, I've got a bunch of questions to ask you, but how did your company and your plans change over the last 3 years from where you started out, especially with COVID?
So I thankfully had done a lot of work remotely over the telephone or over my laptop previously. So for me, there was no big learning curve there. Oh, how do I Zoom, or how do I, so I was already there. The more I did my studies, the more I knew I wanted to shift into cash flow and behavioral cash flow. And so that kind of morphed in, rather than it was like a plan right from the start.
Well, and so, like any good company, startup, what problems, you talked a bit about the problem you need to solve, you want to solve that. And it's really a combination of the emotional side and the practical side. So tell me about jumping into your company and trying to start out solving that problem for people. Did it click right away, or did it take a while to kind of get going?
It took a while. And it's funny because people often talk about budgets.
Yeah.
And I don't work with people on budgets, but I just started putting budget back into my conversation just because people understand the word budget. And then I have access to teach them about the difference between budget and cash flow. Whereas when I started, I was like, budgets don't work for 95% of people. And already people were like, well, what is this then?
Yeah.
So by sort of putting it back into, giving them access to something that they already understood that, what a budget is, then I can move them along the road to seeing what the difference between cash flow and budgeting is, for instance.
Well, and I think having that conversation, I think you had said, most people would rather talk about death than money, right? So finding that entry point into a conversation, it's when you're starting your own business and have your own, it's hard enough to market and get clients, let alone talking about something they don't even want to talk about. So that's interesting that you found the word budget and that conversation a way in. But have you found any other things along the way that kind of got those conversations going and started to add some productive value?
Yeah, I actually just tell people I talk about money.
Yeah.
I talk about money. I talk about something that people don't want to think about or talk about. And one of the shifts that I've made in my practice is the kind of person who's going to work with me is the kind of person who knows that a professional can help them get to the next level.
And it's interesting because I think there are some real skills that people probably need to learn around this, both personal and probably tactical. But it's the stories about successes, either the problems they've had or the stories about successes about probably money that probably help prompt some of those conversations along. So how do you find storytelling and talking about stories about money as been a part of your business?
Well, I talk about my own personal story as a single parent. you know,
Mhm.
2 jobs and, you know, juggling a lot, right?
Anybody can,
I talk
there's probably
about
a
some
few
of the
people,
financial, sorry,
there's probably a few people can relate to that. So,
for sure.
yeah.
So I talk about that. I also will share stories of people that I've helped,
Hmm.
you know, people that have come to a different realization about what they were doing with their money and why they were doing it. And sometimes there's so much fear and shame. So I really try to normalize the conversation and just say, like, everybody feels these things about money.
Hmm.
And if they tell you they don't,
Yeah.
even you, it doesn't matter how much money you make.
Hmm.
You're just broke at a higher dollar value,
Yeah.
right? It
You
doesn't
know,
matter. It does not matter.
yeah, that's interesting because you don't know behind, everybody has a different story and a different circumstance. And even, you know, it's interesting as startups. So we deal, you know, it's a lot of time with startups, companies like that. But, you know, you may have a great idea and tons of clients, and you may have lots of employees and lots of stuff, but sometimes the owner is the last one to get paid and
Oh,
feels the
absolutely.
pain more than anyone else. So no matter how successful a company is, uh, the owner sometimes is the one who gets paid last and least, and people don't see that, right? Or in anyone's circumstances, right? Great job, but that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story about their cash flow, does it?
No, definitely not. No,
Yeah.
it does not.
And so, you know, and I think, you know, part of your company and part of what you do is you really explore how people got to the place they were in their money situation. So a lot of it goes all the way back to how they managed their family as a kid, how they were raised, and all the things about their life that got them to there, right? So how do you tackle that? Because I imagine some of that's fairly sensitive, right? People don't, there's stuff that people don't want to talk about money, but they may be a lot of contributing factors that lead into that.
Well, for one thing, by the time they get to me, they do want to talk about money,
Oh, that's good.
right?
Yeah.
Because they know it's a conversation they need to start. So if you can imagine that someone's on a spectrum of not wanting to talk to money about money and talking about money all the time, I want them to be somewhere in the middle of that spectrum
Hmm.
again, so that they're already addressed. Okay. So I don't, you know, I'm not fixing anybody, right?
Hmm.
I'm asking them. They don't even need to share with me why they have that story. They don't
Ah,
need to share with me how they got there. I want them to look. What was the first memory you have about money? What did your parents teach you about money?
hmm.
You know, have them look, have them, because building awareness is going to help them. I don't need to know, oh, you know, I went through a really bad divorce. Often that stuff will come up,
Yeah.
right? But I don't need to know that. What I want them to start exactly where they are. So
So,
awareness and acknowledgement. And then from there, we
yeah.
build out what their values are around money, what they're trying to accomplish. How do we get them somewhere different?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so that, and how do you find that shift? Does it take a while to get to kind of uncover the awareness part? And then does it make it easier to move on? Or do you find that comes fairly quickly, the awareness part?
Well, it depends. I mean, if they were really great with their money, they would come to the awareness more
I
quickly
guess so,
because it's going to
yeah.
cost them more if it takes them longer, right? For many reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I've been talking to people my whole life,
Yeah.
so I think people find me easy
Yeah.
to talk to.
So what does it look like? You put a plan together. What would I don't know if there is a typical client, but what would be a path for a client if they came to you? So they had awareness, they came to you and said, I need help. Well, what would that journey look like?
Right. So one of the things that we would do, we would have a conversation to find out, okay, is this going to work for you?
Mhm.
Is what I do going to work for you? And sometimes it just won't. So then, you know, end of conversation. That's a free consultation, right? From there, we decide, okay, what is it you're trying to accomplish? What are the challenges that you've got? So then I have a general idea of, okay, because there is the practical part of things, the tactical part of things, and then there's what's the mindset that's going along with that? So I try to separate it and then bring it back together. Somebody said to me, you're so practical about money because like you just don't make it to be a big thing. And it's because I put the emotion back in the money and then we talk about it and then we can take it out.
Yeah.
Right. So let's acknowledge that there's some emotion there.
Yeah. So that's something you hear very often, is put the emotion into the money, because it's usually the exact opposite, right?
Yeah. So it's, and that's where the thing is, because if we pretend that we make money decisions rationally, we are just perpetuating the lie that we make money decisions rationally, and we don't.
Well, so here's the question. So is this an individual? Are you working with individuals? Are you working with couples? Are you working with
sometimes
families?
I work with couples.
Families.
Sometimes I will work with a couple. I will do like if there's a family. Yeah. I will do that kind of work. That's more on a sort of a custom tailored thing. Yeah. So we're looking at, what are we trying to accomplish? Let's work a little bit on your values. What's the end goal? And then we back up and say, what's your money mindset? Let's work a little bit on that. And then I start putting it together. And everybody's different, because some people will be, maybe I'm recommending a refinance, right? So if I'm recommending a refinance, I want to know that when we do that refinance, we have put the strategies in place to make sure that you don't end up how you got there in the first place. Yeah. Right. Well, so how are we putting the money that we found? How are we putting it to work for you so that it supports your goals? And I always provide a short-term goal, because why else do we work? Yeah. Right. Like, if you can never buy another coffee or never buy another pair of shoes, or you can't go to Europe, like what's the point of living? But yeah, I was going to say, and do you find, I think a lot of people avoid it because they think the moment they deal with it, they have to give up so much that they'd rather not deal with it, right? So it sounds like you actually what a budget is. Completely acknowledge the things that people want their money for. So, and I always say it's your money. Yeah. Let me help you figure out what you should be spending. Yeah. And then you can spend it whatever way you want. Yeah. But let's look after your committed expenses, the things that have to be paid. Yeah. Right. And I was just speaking with a client and we were doing some work, and she was like, oh man, I think I might have to cut out chef's plate. And I was like, do you cook? And she said, no, I hate cooking. So I said, what will you be eating if you don't eat chef's plate? Yeah. And she was like, sorry, actually, it caught me off for like chef. That's the food, home delivery food. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I should have explained that. Yeah, no, that's fine. It took me a while, but now I realize if they're not getting chef plate, they're not eating. Yeah. That's right. She's just eating. So I said, let's not do that. Like, let's figure something else out. So how do we make the money work for you? It's your money. And the other thing is, if we're always denying ourselves, we're not going to stick to any budget, any cash flow plan, anything. Yeah. So it seems to me people are in the right, if they're really in the right frame of mind, then you have a real solution to offer them. How do you connect those people out there who are now ready to talk to Maura and haven't found you yet? How do you, as a consultant or a business, how do you actually market yourself or connect with those people? Well, I think marketing is it's something you have to do all the time. So I've been spending a lot of time, building out I do a lot of video content on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I just started an Instagram channel. I just started doing reels, which is, I don't dance in them. I'm just doing like 30 seconds.
You're the TikTok,
So,
you have a TikTok account and you're doing financial dances, are you?
yeah, so I haven't branched out into TikTok. Although several people have said your content would be great on TikTok. But so when you're marketing, you want people to understand that you're an authority, that you're adding value to their life, that you know what you're doing. And the thing is, I want them to understand, like, talking about money is hard for people. So I want them to understand that I'm going to be walking that road with them. And so that's, giving them the hope they need to push through, because sometimes they think that they're stuck where they are. So that's in all of my marketing. And I do get referrals from other financial advisors who this isn't their area of expertise and they don't want to do this work. So I do get referrals that way, and word of mouth.
Yeah, of course, which is the best. Word of mouth comes from someone who's actually had success, which is great, right? Good. Yeah, no, this is great. I'm, for any entrepreneur, it's always that no matter how good you are at what you do, trying to connect with the people who need your services is always the hardest. So that's interesting. And it sounds like, and I totally understand why the video portion of that is huge for you, right? Because it gives that personal connection. So,
well, people see, this is the way I talk.
Yeah.
So this is the way I look. This is the way I talk. So you're either going to relate to it, or you're going to think, man, I don't want to be in a room with that person. You know what I mean?
And there's nothing worse than finding out the hard way with a consultant that this was not a good fit for either person. So no, I think that's great. Videos are great. Way to adopt the technology. I mean, that's clearly, with digital technology, the videos and things like that are great. So, and which we're doing a podcast together. So that just validates that. So so you've had a couple companies before, you've had a company before. So this, not the first time you did, but anything, when you started your company again, anything changed between, clearly the business, what you're doing is different, but how do you feel about from the first time you started a business to doing it this time?
I think I have more patience, and realize the ramp up. I'm going to be an instant overnight 15-year success, right? It takes time, and it takes time for momentum to build. And I think the biggest thing is when you get a little momentum, don't let up.
Exactly. Yeah. Good advice.
Right? Because you'll go back through that dip, which is tough.
And do you have a peer support group, or how do you, sometimes being a solopreneur can be a tough grind. So how do you find support for yourself and encourage yourself in your business?
Definitely, I have a support group.
Yeah.
You know one of them for sure. Yes, you have to have people that you can talk to, and you have to, and you have to say what you need. So when you're talking to that person, what is it you need? Because sometimes you just need to talk, and sometimes you want someone to give you solutions. Yeah. Right? Or give you some feedback or whatever. So I'm quite clear. I'd like some feedback on this, or I just have to get this off my chest. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
You know what? And I think that's one of the reasons we want to talk to consultants and people who are in this role, because sometimes it's just a little light bulb comes on, says I'm not by myself, right? And other people may not be doing the exact same thing as you, but they've had some experiences that may actually really help you out, right? And just like say, talking through them, sometimes you never know what nuggets. I mean, someone's going to listen to this podcast and there'll be some little nugget that we didn't even think we added value, and they may get something out of it, right? So no, I appreciate you sharing that. Anything we didn't talk about that you'd like to share?
I would say the difference between a budget and a cash flow plan. So I think I mentioned that a budget, or maybe I didn't mention, I talk about them all the time. So a budget is good for something with a fixed timeline for a fixed amount of money, fixed goal. So renovating your house, going on a holiday, planning a wedding, start, finish. How much is this going to cost me? How much do I need to save? Build in a little bit of overage, and then you're good to go. When people start to try to make a budget fit their lives long term, it becomes very, very challenging. You know, the average Canadian owes about $1.86 for every dollar that's of earned income. So that means most people are struggling with budgets.
Yeah.
Right. And with cash flow, I'm really teaching people, what are your committed expenses? What are your goals? What have we got to spend? And you get to decide what you're spending it on.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine that a budget is like a diet and cash flow is more like a lifestyle change for your finances.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We started talking about that, and I think we headed down another path. So I appreciate.
We headed down another path.
I'm glad
that can happen with me.
Well, and me too. I think it was me. So I'm glad we had a chance to actually give that analogy, because I think it's helpful for people. So good. And then anything about being a business person or an entrepreneur that I mean, if there's little nuggets that people can get, now's the time. They'd love
you
to share.
really have to consider yourself two different people, the one running the business and the one running your personal life. And the goals that you have personally are different than the goals that you're trying to hit in your business. When you're a consultant, you're putting everything on the line. You're risking a lot. You're risking finances. You're risking reputation. You're risking everything that you've got, right? And as you were saying earlier, sometimes the owner can be the last person to get paid.
Exactly, yeah.
So with my insurance background, that was something that I always taught business owners. You've got to protect your business and you've got to protect yourself. I remember walking into an office where a loan officer was reviewing insurance documents to see whether they could assign them to a loan. And I said, what is the person's personal situation? Well, they're married and they have 4 kids. And I was like, so you can't do that then. Right. Yeah. So sometimes we don't consider ourselves, like, if you're not working in your business, then is your business still able to run without you?
Yeah.
If you're not paying yourself any money, then how is your family being looked after, or how are your own personal goals being looked after? And I think it's really important too to start thinking about what am I trying to build? When you start, what am I trying to build? What's my exit strategy? Am I going to be I can do this work forever, and I probably will, because I love it.
Yeah.
You know, I love to coach people. But let's say I'm not that person. What's my plan? Am I going to sell this business? Am I going to shut it down? What am I going to do with it? Am I going to bring somebody else in? So start thinking about that sooner than you think you need to. And also get help before you think you can afford it.
Oh, that's great advice. And that kind of circles back to the very premise of what your business is about too, right? Get help, get professional, and to talk to someone, right? So that's great advice. Well, thanks for taking the time with us today. I sure appreciate it. Lots of really good information, and hopefully there's someone out there is not only encouraged as a consultant listening to this, but if they're actually in a situation where you could add some value, they reach out and connect with you.
That would be great.
And what is the best way to connect with you?
You can reach me on my website, domoneylikeimakessense.ca. You can always DM me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. And my email is Maura, Maura, at domoneylikeimakessense.ca.
Good. And we will also post that information when the podcast, with the podcast and on our website. So thanks again for taking the time with us today.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank
You
you
too.
both for the great conversation. All right.
Recording stopped? No.